Since 10. For those of you who have not, in case we reference the lecture in some manner and you get curious about it, you can find it on the Nostradamus Project website, which is göteborgfilmfestival.se for Sweden /Nostradamus, and there you can also download the reports. This second half of our session here today is going to be on the topic of blockchain. We set ourselves a pretty big task. How will it change sales, distribution, and funding? So I hope you guys are okay with answering that in the next 45 minutes. With me, I have Erwin M Schmidt, co-founder of Cinemathon and also the propeller FilmTech Office. Tanjala, co-founder of Big Couch and FilmChain. Dana Kiev from Cinetic Media, where you do many things. What's your exact title?
We don't really use titles in the company.
Okay, so you're from Cinetic Media. And Erwin Milligan, who is the CEO of White Rabbit. And we're going to start this session by, I'm going to ask each of you to answer, in a way, this massive question. And you've been given 5 minutes each, and I will clock you. You have some microphones to share there, and you should have a water bottle each if you get exhausted at the thought. So I suppose the core question is, how is blockchain technology already changing the film value chain today, and how will it change it in the next 5 years? And I think we have agreed that Erwin should begin.
How does it change and how will it change? This is like a very daring question. Well, to begin with the easy part. How does it? Well, I think an important element is already the conversation that has basically just started not so long ago. I mean, you wouldn't have such an audience a year ago. So that's happening on one side. There's an exchange. There's a lot of learning happening. Then there is a lot of R&D happening. So companies sit in their offices and in their garages and develop products. We're going to hear about 2 of them later. And on a broader scale, there is, like we see first attempts into regulation, which obviously affect the blockchain sphere as a whole, not just the focus on the film industry. But then, at the same time, what happens is like a certain new wave of digitization, and the blockchain is just part of this. So we can't look at the blockchain as an isolated phenomenon. So much happens, and we're talking about blockchain because it has a certain juiciness to it. There's a hype to it, but exciting things are happening with data and with artificial intelligence, and I think they are probably going to have a much broader impact, and they are a little like under the radar. So there is something that happens in a much broader sense in terms of digital innovation. So that's let's say that's what's happening at the moment. For blockchain in general, we can say that 2017 has been the year for experimentation with use cases. Maybe 2018 will be the year of first business cases where we see deployment of products. But we can also say that there aren't any relevant proofs yet. So there's nothing around that you can point at and say, okay, this is how it works, and this is how it made money, and this is how it impact. There's a lot of R&D, and that's necessary. But it's like very early on.
Just so that I'm sure that we all understand. The underlying technology, the principles of how blockchain work, that is known and that is tested. What we don't know is how well the technologies built on top of blockchain are working, and whether any of these business cases actually make any sense. That hasn't been tested either yet.
Yes and no. We're not going into too many technical details, which I don't master myself. The blockchain as a technology is still a very nascent phenomenon. So we can't say there is a solid technical foundation available that we can just have to build on, business model. It's still like basically as we speak, the foundation is being expanded and rebuilt and exchanged, and the technological parameters are being worked on at the same time while other people build applications on that layer. So it's a very dynamic environment with basically new announcements every day. But that's the status at the moment. At the same time, if you project, and your question was referencing 5 years ahead, it's really hard to say, because there is a parallel that's drawn to the early days of the internet, which I think is a false comparison, because the internet came out of nowhere and had no precedence, had no comparison. There was nothing like the internet. So that and you know, that made so many things possible just overnight, basically. Now with blockchain, you know, blockchain in a lot of sense promises change and disruption, but you know, we could also just solve some of those problems without the blockchain. So like, you know, the blockchain is necessary for some changes, but not necessarily for all that it promises. So I think, you know, that the comparison between internet and blockchain is not entirely correct. That's also why the cycles that are sometimes being used as a comparison with the early days of the internet and the bubble, then the crash of the bubble, then, you know, like the new beginnings. At least I don't think that's
With your last seconds, would you dare to make a prediction of something that's definitely going to happen with blockchain in the next 5 years?
No.
Okay, very good, thank you. Maybe if you pass the mic to Maria, we can move on to stop. That was perfect timing, even though I interrupted. Yes, Maria, how is blockchain technology changing the film value chain today, and how will it change it in the next 5 years?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to make sure that everyone in the room understands what blockchain is. So I would put it into kind of very simple words. I will think of one of kind of the most attractive sides of blockchain. Let's think about transactions, right? So let's say that you need to send money across the world. At the moment, you're going to a bank. It takes several days, and it's quite costly. The blockchain technology, what it does is a ledger, right? That's the other name for it, a distributed ledger technology, DLT. It's a ledger of all the transactions that were ever made. So everyone has a perfect overview about all of the transactions for little to no fees in a very efficient manner. So that means that instantly the transactions you want to send across the world can happen for little to no fees. And the other aspect about it is the decentralization. What does it mean? Well, it means that this ledger of transaction is not in one place. It's not on one computer. It's not within your bank. It's spread across not one, but many, a vast number of computers. And that brings efficiency and transparency. What decentralization also brings, it means that no one can go online and change the data, right? So it's not like you don't trust your bank to do the transaction, or you're not sure if the money has arrived or it went into the right account. Because if someone wants to go and hack, for example, a computer, right, or change the data on that transaction, it cannot go on thousands of computers and do it. So the decentralization brings this completely new layer of first of all, of transparency, and then of security. So that's what it was very kind of fascinating to us about the blockchain technology. And I'm hoping that if it was like this abstract thing beforehand, now you kind of understand the real value to it as why everyone is talking about the buzzword, the decentralization. And definitely kind of the banking system, for example, right? So anything that happens with transactions is one of the advantages. The second of all, it's being a ledger. Again, it can have again a very good list of all for example for rights management, right? So everyone who has an asset, a digital asset, puts it on the blockchain and says it's mine, and then everyone in the network recognizes that. So these are just two of the kind of the many industries which find value in blockchain. And for example, on our side, we were kind of very much focusing on these transactions of like looking at the film industry, just seeing that now you have to, after you make a film, you have this months and years of labor, and then you kind of give your film, and it's all up to kind of the sales and distribution and marketing to kind of do a great job in reaching audiences. And it's just a matter of sitting and waiting. And we didn't like that aspect of sitting and waiting, right? So we basically, now we're looking at how we can work with all of the partners in the ecosystem to collect the revenues and then just distribute them to all the stakeholders involved. So anyone who has invested at any point in a film, be it cast, crew, a studio can see their money instantly into their pockets. And lastly, what really fascinates me is the data, right? So once you know how your film is doing, and you don't need to kind of sit and wait for 6 months, you can know after the opening weekend in a territory, and at the same time, I don't know, it's like a TV platform selling in China, or you have like a sales in India. This information is kind of really empowering because you know territories, you know genres, you know how people reacted. You can see where you can spend more P&A. Is it worth it? And what's working and what's not. And data, I think, is the third very important key.
Very rapidly again, down the line, 5 years from now, what will have changed? You have like 10, 12 seconds.
5 years from now, I think that more of the blockchain companies will emerge. And I think it's a very good way of testing if decentralization works. And I think that a lot of them will start collaborating, because at the moment it's all very fragmented, which is really, really exciting.
Good. So I'm going to see if I can recap what you just explained about blockchain. But basically we can say that, so the thing that it gets confusing here, that we think, all of us think culturally, that money is somehow real. But of course real money, ordinary money, is also not real. That's also just an agreement that we have. That it's a way of tracking value somehow. But we have created this idea of money as a kind of separate unit that can be moved around, and that's a kind of contract. So blockchain is a way of making a contract that can't be cheated on. And that contract can be used for making, for instance, actual contracts if we work together or want to share ownership of something. And it can also be used in the sense of as a baseline of creating a money, cryptocurrencies, for instance, work like this, that can be moved. The value can be moved by making new nodes in this sort of digital bookkeeping, as what blockchain essentially is. And in addition, of course, because you can use it to track value as value is moved around, you can use it to track any kind of transaction. So any kind of transaction that happens can be registered in the blockchain, for instance, such as which file is being streamed where. And by its nature, it is completely transparent.
Exactly.
So that's what it does. It does all of these three things. Yes.
Absolutely. And actually, so basically the contracts are particularly with Ethereum blockchain, which I'm sure you have heard of. So it's not only Ether that goes up in value like crazy. It's basically built this technology for smart contracts that actually validates an agreement between people, right? So of course we still need a 50-page contract that have a lot of clauses to make sure that there are no disputes. But all of that basically goes into a set of instructions that everyone agrees on, and it actually validates the agreement. So smart contracts are pretty smart.
Thank you. We're going to jump over to Alan. Alan, who is from White Rabbit. You also have 5 minutes, and to answer the same question: how is blockchain technology changing the film value chain today, and how will it change it in the next 5 years? And you are indeed allowed to talk about your own company, and I think you want to. So go right ahead.
I do, but in solidarity with my fellow panelists, I'm not going to do my full presentation as was planned, but give me 2 minutes on the end and I'll show the video.
Sure.
Blockchain has a lot of promise, but in itself, I would say that blockchain can make things more efficient, certainly with smart contracts being to automatically distribute revenues. Very, very exciting. You know, removing money out of the equation from relationships fosters trust. We call it a trustless system. in fact remove that whole suspicion of where is my money and have I been paid. And that can generate a lot of good creativity, a lot of good projects, a lot of good relationships in the film industry. I was asked last night, it was a little late, but not too late, last night, whether blockchain is going to make a difference. And the short answer is yes, it will make a difference. And there are certain efficiencies we can achieve with blockchain, but if we want to take it to the next level, if we want to disrupt the film industry for the better of the fans, for the better of the investors, the producers, the rights holders, I think you have to look at blockchain in collaboration with other aspects. And in terms of White Rabbit, what we see is that with peer-to-peer streaming, with blockchain, and with the token system, you're able to change the way the film industry works now and the streaming industry works. Because we are in a period of hegemony, where there are very few players who are dictating the market. These players are now not buying as much content and are producing their own content and leaving a lot of, certainly the European producers, without a home to go to. Or you end up getting lost in the Amazon jungle, iTunes ocean, or you have to have a big marketing budget in order to get visibility. And so for the fans, it's frustrating. They can't find our films. And the result is that 240 million people in Europe today alone are streaming peer-to-peer, and 20 million, just comparatively, are on Netflix. Those numbers...
Streaming peer-to-peer is a polite way of saying they're pirates.
It's a polite way of saying they're pirates, and I'm actually going to say they're fans.
Yeah.
We took two independent studies, one from Australia, one from Finland, which was done by the University of Portsmouth, that showed that 60% of illegal streamers want to pay. They're not pirates. They're fans without access to content. And this is the solution that we have to deliver to them if they're going to be able to, want to continue to watch our films. Still have a few minutes? Yeah. So in my eyes, let's stop calling them pirates. Let's start showing or giving them the tools to prove that they're fans. Let's generate revenue. We're losing $20 billion a year in piracy. 60% of that, theoretically, according to this research, could be recouped. So let's give them the tools to recoup. And let's allow them to do that through, well, hopefully White Rabbit, I guess.
So basically, that's what you're building. It's a service that would allow us to do that. Basically.
Yeah, and it would allow streaming, would allow distribution to be competitive, streaming to be competitive, allow fans to go where they go today, because you can't, start a streaming site, slap on blockchain, and say, come to my streaming site, unless you have $1 billion and you're competing with Netflix. 240 million people are already in Europe, are already streaming peer-to-peer. Go to where they are, where they want to be, and allow a competition in streaming, which can only be good for all the content rights holders.
I should say that there are companies in Europe who are trying to do exactly that. They're saying we can use this technology to create legal streaming sites that would be good enough and that would be transparent and flexible enough to be attractive to filmmakers, and good enough and intuitive enough and easy enough to be attractive to the audience. And that there are companies like Cinetic, for instance, who are trying to challenge Netflix, for instance, by just making a better, different kind of service. And that is not, to be clear, what you're trying to do. You're saying the fans are already in some places. How do we make them pay where they are?
Yeah, I mean, Airbnb didn't need hotels. Uber didn't need wheels. You don't have to reinvent, the wheel. You have to reinvent the concept.
Okay, if you want to show the film, let's do it now. And these guys look worried, so I may have said something wrong. Did I?
So very quickly, White Rabbit is a plugin into your browser that allows you to stream on any peer-to-peer site, and using a token, which I suppose maybe we should talk about later. You're able to pay for content illegally straight to the rights holder.
When we say token, what we mean is like the blockchain money.
More than 240 million people use peer-to-peer services to stream online video content without paying. Globally, the revenue loss for the film industry is $20 billion a year. Yet the majority of streamers are actually willing to pay for their content. They just have no way to do it. Until now. White Rabbit is a browser plugin that recognizes the content you're streaming and allows you to pay the rights holders directly. By allowing people to pay for their streaming, White Rabbit turns pirates into fans, and illegal streaming sites into legitimate platforms. So how do we do this? The answer is WRT, the White Rabbit Token. WRT is used by White Rabbit users as an anonymous way to say, hey, I appreciate your work. I hereby commit to paying for it, if you let me. The tokens go into an encrypted distribution pool, from which the owner of the content gets paid by entering into a smart contract. Encryption ensures only you know who and where the token came from. Should the rights holders reject your offer, tokens are returned to you and no transaction ever occurred. White Rabbit is not only a plugin but a powerful content ecosystem, ready to disrupt the entertainment industry by solving its biggest challenges. Access. By empowering fans to pay, White Rabbit incentivizes streaming sites to supply what the fans demand, access and diversity of content. Transparency. Blockchain technology ensures revenue transparency, meaning filmmakers and right holders receive all the revenue that they are entitled to. Cash flow. Collecting digital revenue can take years. With White Rabbit, payment is received within minutes. Piracy. People no longer need to be stigmatized as pirates when they can prove their loyalty as fans by paying for the content. Together, White Rabbit and its users will bring power back to where it belongs, with the filmmakers and the fans. It's time for a responsible revolution by responsible rappers. Disclaimer, this revolution definitely not be televised.
Thank you. We do notice that while this sounds super cool, it also relies on people actually wanting to pay. So that's the part of this that we don't know yet if they will want to.
Yeah, but we do have that 60%.
Yeah, but that's what we say in surveys. Let's see what it actually how it pans out. Okay, let's move to Dana. You don't currently really work with blockchain, right?
No, I mean, I have difficulty using Siri. I'm not an expert on the subject by any means, but I think that perhaps I can be a surrogate for some of the people in the audience today who have a lot of questions. I think there are more questions than answers. I think the feeling is that it's equal, like, you know, in just talking about it with peers and, you know, around town this week, I feel like people are equal parts, you know, people are bewildered. They want it to be demystified somehow. And so as I was listening to all of you talk, a number of, you know, questions occurred to me that I'll just sort of throw out there and maybe we can, you know, see where that leads us. I mean, on the one hand, there is, I think, definitely transformative potential. The technology, you know, in conjunction with just the entire, you know, digital, you know, communications information technology revolution. There's enormous implications for the future that I think we're probably in its infancy. I don't think we can possibly fully comprehend what those are at this point in time. But the idea that, you know, at the moment, private corporations control an enormous amount of data, and as recent events have indicated, that is a double-edged sword. So the idea that you could sort of democratize that information and empower, you know, fans to have some voice in the process of how film gets made, I mean, that's profound. I mean, you know, we've seen, of course, recent experiments with crowdfunding, and as you pointed out, you know, the audience is fragmenting, and the idea that you can sort of find that, you can target that audience through this investment technology and make them a participant in your film project, like that would be truly new and different. And I think I'm sure there have been a few recent examples of that, but, you know, I think that's what's probably likely to happen for the next few years. And if that really sticks, I feel like that's when, you know, a model might actually come into focus and things would really shift in that direction. You know, on the other hand, there's, you know, as I understand it, the Bitcoin, you know, technology emerged out of the dark corners of the internet, and it was supposed to be this sort of, you know, playground for unregulated activity. And then I read recently in, you know, the New York Times, like Goldman Sachs has opened like a Bitcoin trading desk, and like, you know, New York Stock Exchange is looking at it. So, how will we prevent, you know, these large institutions and corporations from ultimately, you know, involving themselves in the space like everything else? And you know, that's where the rubber meets the road, and I feel like that's where I have a lot of questions. But if you look, for example, a company like Netflix, that, you know, there's so much, you know, diagnostic tools. They know exactly, you know, what people are watching, and that information isn't shared with us. So, you know, we're a little bit in the dark, and that's why you're increasingly producing all this content on their own. But the idea that, you know, that there's a definable audience that, you know, that and a lot of people think that the future sort of belongs to sort of these targeted VOD platforms. But the idea that constituency, that sort of self-selecting constituency could sort of, you know, be galvanized around a project, and then not only pay to consume it, but also maybe become investors or participants in it. I think that that represents true innovation, and it's sort of aligned with the overall way that things are sort of trending. So I would welcome that, and I think what needs to happen. I think the future, from our standpoint, my company does a number of different things. We function as a sales agent. We do single picture financing work. We have a management company that represents a lot of directors and producers. But fundamentally, we sort of gravitate towards working with creators who prioritize creative control over their work. And as the studios sort of recede from this sector of the film business, there's more and more private equity in the space. There's flexibility, and I think what it's going to take is for a few high practitioners to sort of be willing to leave something on the table in order to take the plunge with something that is untested. And once that potential is realized, if it's truly explosive because of the level of engagement and investment that the sort of core audience has in the product, because they've been seeded in this new way, they have a sense of real ownership. Whether that's actually monetary ownership or just participation, that I think is probably going to unleash that's something that you could see competing with a huge $20 million marketing budget to open a movie. That is a really old model that we're still using, that the studios are still using, of just spending tons of money to get the opening weekend gross. And what if that audience was already there? I think there are a lot of people looking at that. At the same time, it feels very speculative. So yeah, I'm here to work.
That's it. I mean, as I was mentioning a couple of times, especially for younger demographics, advertising doesn't work. So those advertising budgets, if they don't generate recommendations from actual humans, it's thrown out. So this is one way of doing that. What I'm learning so far, basically, is that two things seem definitely to be happening. One thing that is very clear that this technology can do, and that we already have all the pieces for, and then maybe we should build the infrastructure, what the actual companies will be, but making crowdfunding and crowd investment really work and become a real power, like exponentially, like much more powerful and bigger than it is now. That's something that's happening. And also the other thing is, if we can recoup even a tiny sliver of the pirate money by making it easier for people to give them, all of those gifts on the internet of people saying, shut up and take my money, they're not joking around. So clearly, if we get some of that money into the industry, again, that already is going to help. But of course, there's so much more. It looks like Erwin wants to come in. I want to hear, Maria, what you guys are doing, and then yeah.
Just one quick remark. I mean, I'm equally fascinated by the opportunities of the technology as I'm skeptical. And I mean, there is a lot. I mean, just to quote Dana, the transformative potential. That's what I'm fascinated by. So there is probably so much that can be achieved with blockchain that we don't even see at the moment. At the same time, I'm a little skeptical because most blockchain usually comes with like an overhype association and quite a couple of false promises. And I think this promise of give the power to the audience and all this, that kind of like misjudges the creative process and some necessary functions within the industry. There is a lot of bashing of middlemen and gatekeepers coming from the blockchain community. So now, while I won't defend gatekeepers and middlemen, they have an important function that cannot just be, and that the function is obviously curation. So like make little out of a large selection. And that is something that is questionable but important. That's just how this industry functions. We can't just like clear the table and say, okay, all the power goes to the audience. And this is what a lot of the platforms actually promise. And that's what I'm very, very skeptical about. Just one of the skepticism I have.
I agree. The reason I look skeptical is that you just reminded me that, of course, the gatekeepers have not served women and minorities very well in this industry. So we're literally sitting there with our money being like, please. So there's also something. There has been the historical power imbalance between the audience and the industry has not been it's not been good.
Blockchain won't solve that problem.
But it could be part of the solution, maybe. Maria, could you just tell us a little bit about what Big Couch is and well?
So we've been set up like 4 years ago with Big Couch, but FilmChain is still fairly new. We really started digging. It was, I don't know, March 2017 when we really got into the meat of it and understanding if blockchain is the solution. With Big Couch, we were addressing to a much more cooperative approach. So we were getting also the crew to become invested in the projects they were working on. So allowing to kind of optimize budgets for producers, looking at a very legal and solid manner to get everyone part of your project and part of your ecosystem. And we've done films in the UK with the BFI Creative Scotland, with Icelandic Film Centre. So we've kind of left the UK territory where we were getting like anything between 15 to 17% of a film's budget to be the contribution of the crew that afterwards were very clearly translated in the waterfall. So for us, that was kind of very important to become as co-financiers alongside kind of the bigger players, so to say, which were the film funds. And then with that, we've just noticed how long it takes for money to come back to the people that were part of the recoupment schedule, right? And then we were talking with the producers, and they were saying, well, we don't have any power. So that's when we set up FilmChain with this aim to really cut down on the manual process, the very kind of complicated and quite expensive. And yeah, basically to collect revenues from all sources of distribution and instantly pay people. And I think it's a huge leap of faith, right? So when you no longer look at people doing actions, but to trust a piece of code to do the action for you. And we're at this, I think that we're at this kind of fascinating stage of humanity, right? And with that, like with automation, there will be a lot of things kind of changing and adapting, and some people, might lose their jobs. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's in that sector to really look at that, because you can't just pretend it's not happening. Like, I think more and more people will take this leap of faith of going like, okay, the technology is tested. It no longer has bugs like it does now. So hopefully, in a few months' time, it's amazing how much this piece of code can do. I'm losing my job, so how can I adapt?
But I like it because it's such a clear, what you guys are doing is such a clear solution, a very practical problem. Like crew funding is a thing, but the threshold is very high because it takes forever to ever see the money, if you get any. So can we just make that threshold lower for the crew to participate in this way by making it much more efficient? And maybe that's going to be the way in, that we can solve some very specific problems with this technology first.
Absolutely. Well, that's how we kind of set ourselves as well. Like, we don't want to change behaviors. We want to be, we have the platform that will be up and running in a few months. We have clients who want to use us, and all the stakeholders, so the financiers, the post-production houses, anything down to the crew, to just see their money instantly. So we don't want to kind of change the world. We don't want to kind of do we don't want to have a lot of missions, but to do this and to do it clearly and efficiently, and then build on it, like integrating audiences, better marketing, better data analysis. So all the features will be built upon a very kind of simple proposition.
Alan, I mean, in a way, the problem you guys are trying to solve is also like super specific. Like, here are these people watching this content and they're not paying. Can we make it possible for them to pay?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the investor part of it, and I think what blockchain offers European film, art house film, world cinema is a potential for a competitive advantage, finally, to compete with Netflix, who are actually sitting there with all the data themselves. Very little transparency. We don't know who our fans are. We don't know how they interact with our product, and we need to have that knowledge in order to learn from what we're doing. As well, if we can say to the investor, you know what, you don't have to wait 3 years for down payment from one of the OTTs in order to recoup the money. In fact, you can get it every time someone watches the film. That gives us a huge competitive advantage, also not only in the film industry, but also with other industries who we're competing for time with, the gaming industry, for example. And I think that's a very important thing to do. And like you say, the next 5 years are crucial. I would say probably the next 2-3 years are crucial because Netflix, they're just cutting titles. They've built up their power base on $20 billion of debt, which they now have, which was based on our rights. And the studios are now exiting Netflix. Disney's the first. They have now 2 streaming sites. They're actually creating a blockchain themselves. If all the studios are going to create their own streaming sites, if Netflix is going to have their subscription service that you have to subscribe to see that 1 series or 2 series or whatever it is that you want to watch, how does that give something back to the fans? That doesn't give anything back to the fans except the headache to find what you're trying to find what you're looking for, and trying to subscribe to like 20 different sites and have all these different logins. It's a nightmare. And so I think they're cannibalizing themselves, while we are free to start again, and we are free to use the peer-to-peer, which is way more competitive. We're not spending money on huge infrastructure costs here. The market is there, the delivery system is there. This is a chance for us in order to have actual competition and brand our own films in Europe or in Asia and be able to deliver to the fans exactly what they want.
In your case, though, you're building it on voluntary payment still.
Well, it is a voluntary payment. They have to choose to pay, but I would say anyone who adds the plugin into their system want to pay. Otherwise, why would they put it there in the first place?
Because I could foresee that I'm going to watch some movies that I'm going to feel they're not good enough for me to pay, and then some others I'm going to definitely want to pay for, and then I'm going to feel that it's okay to pirate the ones that are bad because actually I'm paying for quality now, not for watching the file.
Well, you're prompted to pay after about 10 seconds when the content is recognized. And of course, if you choose not to pay, if you're not going to be among the 60% who do want to pay, well, we'll see the numbers when the proof is in the pudding, but then you are definitely a pirate. We have to make a difference between saying, you have the opportunity to be a fan and prove that you're not a pirate. And if you don't do it, well, I'm sure the MPA, they should send us Christmas cards, because then they know actually who are pirates.
Yeah, you're going to be pressured to release the information, by the way, of who the actual pirates are. Erwin looks like he was coming. Oh, Maria first. Yeah. Maria first.
Just a small comment. That's why we have an encrypted distribution pool for the tokens, so we don't know who they are, so they can't.
I was actually thinking that we would always have to remember when we talk about blockchain startups is how much of this could be done without blockchain. And this is actually the encryption here for what you want to do is very relevant. But of course you could make VOD services completely transparent even without blockchain. Like that's just a technical choice. This is just a way of doing it easier. But most people who have a successful VOD platform of any kind actually are very possessive about their data because that's part of their business model. Oh yeah.
Yes, what I wanted to say, I wanted to really kind of touch base on what Dana said and Alan about big companies doing it and developing it, and it is a threat. And to be honest, just to make it very clear, like right now, Ethereum is working on Amazon. Yeah, so in order to hold your servers, you have to still work with Amazon Cloud because you have all this like a huge amount of data that needs to be hosted somewhere. So it is a big threat, and that's why I would just really love that by the end of this talk, people to at least have the curiosity to try out what this is all about. Because the more people are involved in this, the more they can be kind of a counterparty to big companies. Facebook just announced 2 days ago that they're launching their blockchain arm. So you have the big giants kind of really implementing the technology, but doing nothing decentralized about it, so to say. And I would say that the more blockchain is kind of brought into the mainstream, and more people are trying it out, either I don't know, just inform yourself on see what Consensus is doing. It's like a big organization of over 800 entrepreneurs and initiatives that are just kind of trying things out. Buy a token, see how difficult it is. See how you know how you can get involved in threads, and how you can discuss and improve. bring your party to the table. And this is really important, because otherwise they have a lot of money, and they have the technology, and they have the people working for them, and it's just easy to shift the power back into centralization.
Big companies are going to follow their interests anyway, and the interest of world cinema, of art house cinema, of European film in general, does not align with the shareholders of global media companies, generally speaking. So clearly we have to do something, and right now it does feel like a lot of the innovation space, and a lot of the energy to try anything that's different from what we've done before is connected to blockchain in some way. Now, Maria, you just gave some very specific advice, like what we could do, or what all of us should do today. Try one of these services, like speak to the companies, buy a token, like start interacting with it and see whether there's anything here that feels like it could give you something. Do you others have any other? Because I'm looking at the time as well. We will definitely end no later than 5 minutes too, so that's 9 more minutes. What should everybody be doing today? Erwin, you start.
Something that I find very exciting is to read white papers. White papers are the documents, basically the scripts for a blockchain product. So whatever company you come to and you visit their websites, there will be a big button saying white paper. Usually the papers are between 20 and 50 pages long, and they are sometimes very, very complicated, but sometimes they are just like extremely well written, and they explain what they do. So White Rabbit will have a white paper. And that's the best school actually to understand. And it's a little work, but it helps tremendously to understand the complexity.
What would you say? What should everybody do today?
I would say think critically.
Yeah.
Like these devices are very, very powerful. Look on the subway, walk on the streets, everybody's looking at this all the time. This is all anyone is doing. We're interacting with the device all day long, and so but we're passively consuming a lot of that media without thinking about where it comes from. One thing that occurred to me while everyone was talking about was how Rotten Tomatoes drives the studios crazy. They hate it because they're at the mercy of it. It levels the playing field. The movie's a dog, and they can't control that, and that's good. So I think, although it seems like, quixotic to imagine that this technology could somehow make it possible for, any audience to, get a movie made that they want to see. I mean, that's an experiment that is absolutely worth trying, and even if it's, tulip fever. I mean, I guess it sort of depends on what the level of engagement is, but I think that for the film sector that maybe the studios and the other finances are retreating from because it is, so maybe it is too marginal or targeted. And as you said in your previous lecture, like, it's not even clear that like the younger audience has an appetite for feature-length content, because of the mobile devices. So, all of that, those sea changes are, I think, just starting now. And I think it's exciting to have these conversations to try to sort of, fantasize about, what could take place. And I think, we should experiment. We should try things because that's how change occurs.
Yeah, Alan, what should everybody be doing today?
Well, from my perspective, I would say go into your catalogs, go into your libraries, check out your rights. Those long tails, which became short tails with now only 2-3 years of revenue, with blockchain, if we succeed with this now, they're going to start having increased value. And you can now, take your rights, your films, stop protecting them, start thinking about how you're going to monetize your IP, and think about how much interaction you can create with your fans. Think about how much more you can give the fans, because the fans are thirsty for more. If they love a film, they love a film. They can sit for hours watching people talking about the film on YouTube. There's a lot of things we can do, with our films to increase the value of its IP. And to be frank, as a producer myself, that's our job. And I think blockchain offers a great possibility for us to do more with what we already have.
I'd like to use our last minute to do another round, so let's start over there with you, Alan. I'm going to force you all to make a prediction, and now we understand that we're in guessing territory. 5 years from now, just give me like one sentence of some kind of change that will have happened that somehow connects to what we're talking about.
FilmChain and White Rabbit have brought a new reality to the film business.
I will know what I'm talking about at that point.
I would say that with blockchain, I would hope that there will be less manipulation of what people consume and what people do every day. I wholeheartedly believe and hope that we will be less manipulated.
Political, wonderful vision, yes?
First of all, I think the space will be regulated. That's something that the regulators are working on right now. And once that's done, solid business model can emerge. And simple ones like financing films is not easy at the moment. From a let's say small investor perspective, even if you invest like larger amounts, you have to go through like complicated processes. And I think that can be significantly simplified through regulated blockchain for that.
Can I just ask though, once it is regulated, what differentiates it as a sort of, form of exchange from fiat currency that currently is regulated and is what used for investments? That's something I also just don't understand.
Yeah, because then ties into a product like FilmChain. So investment comes on one end, and then further down the line you have different building blocks, one of which being the distribution of revenue. So you cannot use FilmChain actually as a model or as a way to distribute revenues transparently or like instantly if it's not on the blockchain. So you would have one way in for the money, one way out for the money, and in the middle you have different other products like FilmChain that distribute.
Everyone will know what everyone else is paid. Is that one practical consequence? Is it necessary? No.
No.
It would be possible to make that kind of transparency, but nobody wants that.
No, but I think the transparency is overrated anyhow.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna ask.
Does anyone in this room want to open their wallet and to show it to anyone else how much they have in their wallet? No. So I would say let's.
But I mean, there are choices about the transparency that we're gonna make, and then these levels can be set at different levels. I think I have two predictions. One is that, but it's not 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, I think we're not going to talk about blockchain anymore because we're going to be using it. I think all of us are using the internet, and we're talking incredibly little about HTTP these days. Like, we're not excited about protocols the way we used to be in 1994. So that's the thing that will happen. And then my prediction, let's see, you get to nod or shake your head. 5 years from now, will we see a European service that is based on transactional VOD, paid with blockchain, that can challenge the big tech five? Erwin says no.
Say no.
No.
Yeah, open it. We will open it in 2 months.
2 months. They say they're opening it in 2 months. It's interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
3 months. 3 months.
Yeah.
We already opened one.
And they've already opened one. That's why I'm asking, because I know that these companies exist. Will we see somebody who will somebody have solved this in 5 years?
Absolutely.
No idea?
Absolutely.
Yes?
I'm open to both possibilities, I'd say.
It might happen.
But the services that exist now, how will they compete with how they
Anyone
capitalize
copy?
organizations that will be in
Please,
Well, we
speak
had
into the microphone.
our presentation yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
So that's the question. But there is a possibility, and maybe for the first time, and that's the hope we're going to end on.
Yes.
Maybe for the first time, for a long time, there is a possibility that the tech giants can be challenged with the help of a cheaper technology. Erwin doesn't believe it. I think we're going to continue this conversation here next year. Please give a big hand to all of
dreams
us.
begin responsibility.
Yeah.
That's it.
Please give a big hand to all of us.